There's no one more wretched than me in this world. No, scratch that. There's no more wretched zombie than me. I finally managed to get into the city, only to encounter a zombie virus outbreak. The bus I was on had just entered the city when it was surrounded by zombies. In the blink of an eye, the bus was torn to pieces, and everyone on board except me was dead. Why was I the exception? Because I bit a zombie. At that moment, I thought, well, I'm gonna die anyway, so I might as well take one down with me. Otherwise, I die with regret. Turns out, not only did I not die, but I also became a zombie without losing my consciousness. Just thinking about spending the rest of my days with these hideous zombies gets my blood boiling. I rolled up my sleeves and said viciously, "Just you wait, I'm gonna wipe you pests out." But then, a search and rescue team showed up. There were more than a dozen of them, each holding a gun, long or short, big or small. One of the men, who was quite tall with long legs, picked up a machine gun and without hesitation started firing at the zombies around me. After taking out the zombies, he strode towards me, looking menacing. My legs went weak, and I dropped to my knees with a thud. Before I could plead for mercy, he spoke first. "Are you okay?" His voice was deep and magnetic, and it actually sounded quite nice. But I was so scared that I stuttered, I'm fine. He examined my body carefully, and finding nothing wrong, he said into the walkie-talkie on him, "There's a survivor, male." So, he didn't notice I was a zombie? I immediately let out a sigh of relief. I almost met my end right here. "So, can I leave now?" He nodded and said, "You can go." Then the man led me to an enormous house made entirely of iron, with iron walls, an iron roof, and even an iron floor. But that's not what I meant. Looks like the zombie, am in deep trouble. The man noticed my nervousness and chuckled slightly. "I'm not a zombie. I don't eat people. You don't have to be so nervous." I stole a glance at the pistol hanging on his body and said meekly, "I'm not nervous. I was just a bit scared that he'd figure out I was a zombie and shoot me with that gun." After a long while, the man asked again, "What's your name?" "Noah." "How old are you?" 20. "What about your family?" I was suddenly overcome with grief. "They're all dead. My mom died during childbirth from a massive hemorrhage, and my dad passed away not long ago from advanced lung cancer. This time I came to the city to fulfill my dad's wish and find a long-lost friend of his. I spent ages getting someone to look into it and finally got some news. But before I could even meet my friend, the zombie virus broke out. Maybe he thought I was too pitiful. The man, James, patted my head and said, "I'm James. From now on, we're family." His teammates were also really enthusiastic, fussing over me, which made my social anxiety act up. I just kept giggling stupidly. Along with the survivors I brought back, there were also two zombies, a male and a female. Curious, I stood at a distance and asked James, who was cleaning his gun, "Excuse me, what are you guys doing with those two zombies?" "Conducting experiments." "For experiments?" "Well, the command center discovered some mutated zombies. They want to compare regular zombies with the mutated ones." I was startled. "What do you mean by mutant?" "They've turned into zombies, but they still haven't lost their consciousness." "Isn't he talking about me?" My heart was pounding like crazy, my palms were sweating buckets, and I was having a hard time catching my breath. I swallowed hard and asked casually, "So, have you caught any mutated zombies?" James shook his head. "Not yet." "Then do you guys know where the mutants are?" James looked disappointed. "We don't know yet." I felt a sudden sense of relief, but couldn't help worrying. If they were to catch me for their experiments, I'd be a goner. But I didn't want to die, so I came up with a series of escape plans. However, every time James would haul me back, he said very seriously, "I know you're bored, but it's not safe outside. You can't go out." I felt like crying but had no tears. For me, the ones who were unsafe were them with guns. Oh my God, what the hell am I supposed to do? The turning point came the next day. We were sitting together having breakfast when I noticed the two male members of the search and rescue team behaving unusually affectionately. Wait, what the hell? Are they making out? I was stunned. My jaw nearly dropped. Sophia, the only female member of the search and rescue team and also my sister, explained to me they were a couple. They'd been together for years. Oh, I see. Looking at the two of them all over each other and lovey-dovey, I suddenly came up with an idea. If they can date, does that mean I can date James too? It's not that I like him, It's just that if he falls for me, I can manipulate him, and then I won't get caught and used for experiments. I'm such a clever guy. That night, I pretended to be sleepwalking and climbed into James' bed. I never thought James would look so skinny, but when I touched him, he was so ripped. 1, 2. Holy cow, he's got 8-pack abs. And James' face looks incredibly good, whether you look at it from afar or up close. He had beautiful, sword-shaped eyebrows, a pair of alluring fox-like eyes, a straight and high-bridged nose, and lips that were neither too thin nor too thick, rosy and looking quite charming. No, they look really good. I feigned a confused look and said, "How come I'm in your bed?" Before he could say anything, I looked at him in horror again and said, "Don't tell me I was sleepwalking again?" Patted my chest, still shaken. "Thank God I sleepwalked onto your bed. If I'd sleepwalked outside, I'd have been torn apart by zombies for sure." Then I said, "Bro, how about I sleep with you tonight? Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll sleepwalk outside and get eaten by zombies." I didn't think he'd agree. I just wanted to lay the groundwork for even more outrageous moves later. But I never thought he'd actually agree. They're actually really nice. That night, I didn't do anything. After all, you can't rush good things. I was afraid that if I was too hasty, it would only backfire. So I stayed quietly in James' arms and slept through the night. I slept soundly through the night without any dreams. When I woke up, James' spot was already empty. After getting washed up and going out, the rest of the search and rescue team were either cleaning their guns or packing things up. Only James was bustling around in the kitchen. He moved with practiced ease, clearly a regular in the kitchen, and look at the muscles on his arms. So charming. While having a meal, I imitated what I saw on TV and casually rubbed his calf gently. But he just glanced at me and then lowered his head to eat again. No response. I pretended to drop my chopsticks on the floor again. Leaning on one hand against his thigh, I bent down to pick them up. Just as my hand accidentally slid towards the inside of his thigh, he suddenly grabbed my wrist tightly. Noah made a big move, and everyone looked up at him, their eyes filled with confusion. He let go of my wrist, cleared his throat, and said, "Eat your meal properly." The two teammates who were arguing over who had killed more zombies thought James was talking about them, so they obediently shut up. Meeting James's inquisitive gaze, I grinned at him and gave a sweet smile. Maybe my eyes were so innocent and naive that he couldn't figure out what I was up to. He sighed, got up, and left. That night, I showed up in James' room with a pillow in my arms. "Brother, can I sleep with you again tonight?" Because of my over-the-top actions during the day, he couldn't speak right away. He just stared at me. I hung my head and said pitifully, "Can't I? But I'm really scared to sleep alone. I'm afraid I'll sleepwalk and get eaten by zombies. You know, I lost my mom when I was a kid, and not long ago, I lost my dad. Now I'm all alone." Then I let out a soft sigh and said, "If you're not willing, that's fine. Just pretend I never said anything." With that, I turned around and left. I walked to the door and heard him say, "Sure." I spun around in a flash, dashed to the bed, burrowed into James' arms, found a comfortable spot, and settled in to sleep. I was worried that being too eager would scare James off, so I planned to take things slow. But before going to bed at night, I heard James tell his teammate, "The headquarters has determined the activity range of the mutants. We have to capture one within half a month. I'm about to get cut open and have my guts ripped out. What's the point of taking things slow? He's got to fall for me right this instant." So here I am again. My fingers kept swirling in circles on James' chest. Whether he had fallen asleep or was just stunned by me, James didn't react much. I tentatively slipped my hand into his shirt, let it roam freely on his back, then slowly moved it to the front. Just as my hand was about to touch his Adam's apple, he suddenly grabbed my hand. "Stop fooling around. Go to sleep," he said. I pitched my voice higher. "Brother, my chest hurts so much. Could you please take a look for me?" With that, I took his hand and guided it towards my chest. He yanked his hand back, flipped over, and sat up on the bed, demanding, "Noah, what on earth are you trying to do?" I had expected he might get angry, but I never thought he'd be this furious. His eyes were fierce, and his brows were knitted so tightly that they could squash a fly. Thankfully, I'd already made preparations. I took a deep breath, looked at him with sincere eyes, and said, "I don't want to do anything else. I just like you and can't help wanting to get close to you." James froze. "You like me?" I nodded vigorously. Yeah, when we first met, you walked towards me against the light like a hero stepping on colorful clouds. Couldn't help but have my heart race. I thought, I've fallen for you. To be honest, I was a bit nervous when I said those words. I was afraid he might not be into guys, in which case I'd be completely out of luck. But luckily, aside from being a bit incredulous, he didn't show any signs of disgust or revulsion. He stared at me, as if trying to find something from my face. To seem sincere and genuine, I looked him in the eye. His pitch-black eyes were like a bottomless lake, and one could easily get lost in them. And his rosy lips, they were like delicate, glistening flower petals, just waiting to be plucked. I couldn't help but move closer to him. But James turned his head away, and I ended up kissing him on the cheek. He turned around and faced away from me, saying, "It's getting late. Go to sleep." Listening to his heavy breathing, I laughed. Zhang Fei definitely wouldn't act like this towards Guan Yu. Later on, I casually flirt with James now and then. First, he'd blush and shy away, but now he's completely unfazed. Under the dining table, I put one of my legs on James' leg and gently swayed it. Throughout all this, James didn't react at all. He even put his hand on my leg. Looks like I'm on the verge of victory. When the search and rescue team was about to leave, I helped James tidy up his clothes and whispered, "Take good care of yourself. I'll be waiting for you to come back." Seeing his face turn red in a flash, I felt really good and also helped the others tidy up their clothes. Sophia is a chatterbox and we chatted for a while. I was chatting merrily when suddenly James' voice came from behind. "Let's go." The voice was suppressed, with a faint hint of anger. Sophia looked in the direction James had left and asked, puzzled, "Who pissed off the captain?" The others all shook their heads and said, "It wasn't me." I shook my head too and said, "It wasn't me either." By the time James and the others came back, it was already dark. They also brought back 4 survivors, 1 man and 3 women. I trotted over eagerly to take the big and small bags from James' hands, grinning from ear to ear, but he didn't give me the bag, didn't even glance at me. After handing the bag to someone else, he went to arrange accommodation for the 4 of them. Sophia came over and nudged my shoulder. "You're something else. Our team leader has such a good temper, yet you managed to piss him off." I looked completely bewildered. "I didn't piss him off." Sophia shook her head. "Think it over. There must be something." Am I? But I racked my brains and still couldn't figure out how on earth I had made him angry. For a long time after that, James kept ignoring me. No matter what he was doing, he'd stay far away from me. I didn't have a chance to get anywhere near him. Even when it was time to sleep at night, he wouldn't let me enter the room. He even told me to find someone else. I was so pissed, but I had to bite the bullet if I wanted to stay alive. So I just kept sucking up to him like a lovesick puppy every day. To make matters worse, James still didn't pay much attention to me. As the number of survivors increased, the space in the safe house got smaller and smaller. James submitted a report and asked the command center to send a helicopter to take the survivors away. But the zombie riot is coming in a few days, and it's not suitable to go out. The command center told us to wait a few days before taking action. But the problem is, the food stocked in the safe house is almost gone, and all the food nearby has been scavenged. We can't hold out for more than a few days. If we don't want to starve to death, we'll have to go to the city center to look for food. But with the zombie riot, it's really unsafe to go out. James thought for a long time and decided to risk his life and lead everyone in the search and rescue team out to look for food. Hearing James' arrangement, I excitedly raised my hand and said, "Take me along. I can tear zombies apart with my bare hands." James flatly refused, given that I always used to want to run outside. The others in the search and rescue team said I was just bored staying in the safe house and wanted to go out and have some fun. I swear on my life, I really wanted to help. Okay. I admit that I was frustrated because I couldn't share James' bed, so I got a bit pissed off and wanted to take this chance to run away. But I really did want to help, and I'm telling the truth about being incredibly strong. I developed this strength from helping my dad carry grain when I was a kid. I'm not exaggerating when I say that at 15, I could carry 300 pounds of grain and walk 20 li. Worried they wouldn't believe me, I directly lifted the man closest to me with one hand. They were stunned, their mouths hanging open so wide it looked like their jaws were about to dislocate. And the man I lifted turned pale with fear and shouted, "Put me down. Put me down now." I said to James, I'm strong. I can carry more. Just let me go. Many hands make light work. He still wouldn't let me go, saying it was too dangerous. I was anxious, but I couldn't exactly reveal that I'm a zombie. Having no other options, I threw a tantrum, rolled around on the ground, and clung to James' leg to stop him from leaving. I also said, if you don't let me go, then we might as well all starve to death. Hearing this, everyone got annoyed and they all said in unison, no way, you have to go. One of the grandmas with her grandson said, we have to go. James is on the search and rescue team. It's his duty. It's practically the end of the world, and you're still trying to guilt trip people. James, as the captain of the search and rescue team, risking his life to protect us, that's already pretty damn good. If I were in that situation, I would have kicked that old lady right into the zombie horde. See if she'd still keep yapping. I rolled my eyes and said, well, why don't you go then? The old lady's face changed, and she called me a bad seed, accusing me of bullying the elderly. I pointed at the old lady and said, if you try to guilt trip me again, watch out or I'll throw you out. The old lady stuck her neck out and shouted, I'd like to see you try. I let out a cold laugh and said, just you see if I dare. When the old lady saw I was dead serious, she finally didn't dare say anything more. It's normal for everyone to be scared. After all, those zombies out there are so ugly and so fierce. They're ordinary humans with no weapons and no special skills. They're timid, so it's understandable that they don't dare to go out. But moral blackmail just isn't right. I clung tightly to James' leg and said, if you don't let me go, we'll all starve to death. Forced into a corner, James had no choice but to take me along. All the way, James kept telling me, if there's any danger, you must hide behind me. You have to follow my instructions and don't act on your own. Yeah, I got it. Don't worry, I'll be a good boy and do as I'm told. No way. As soon as I get a chance, I'm gonna run away. For safety reasons, James didn't take us to the city center but searched along the way. However, after searching for nearly an hour, I found nothing. James decided to lead the search and rescue team to the city center. He turned around, looked at me and said, I'll send you back first, then I'll go check out the city center with them. I folded my arms, tilted my head up and looked at James with my nostrils. No way, I just won't. I'm pretty stubborn, the kind that not even 100 horses could drag me back. Time was pressing, and seeing how determined I was, James gave in again. He sighed and said, all right. Along the way, we didn't see many zombies. I didn't even get a chance to escape. When we came back, we were loaded with stuff and everyone was really happy. Only I wore a worried look. That is, until we ran into those survivors at the safe house. James was a bit angry and said, what are you guys doing out here? Don't you know how dangerous it is outside? The middle-aged woman said irritably, who knows if you guys will run away? What if we starve to death then? Sophia shouted at the top of her lungs. The commotion alerted the zombies nearby, and they came swarming in, a dark mass that was pretty terrifying. James quickly opened the door of the safe house and said, guys, hurry up. But when it was my turn, I didn't know who yanked me from behind. I stumbled and fell against the wall. By the time I got back up, the door had already been shut. The zombies didn't even glance at me, but they didn't leave right away either. Instead, they lingered around the door of the safe house. I used to always think about running away, but when the time actually came to leave, I found myself reluctant to go. After all, we'd been together for so long, and they'd been really good to me. I stood by the door and waited for a while, hoping someone would open it for me. To be honest, I was kind of hoping James would come to my rescue, but I guess I knew deep down he wouldn't, and I totally get why he didn't open the door to save me. After getting along for so long, I know James isn't afraid of death, but once this specially reinforced door is opened, it won't just be about me and him dying. James was here for search and rescue, not just for me. He couldn't sacrifice the greater good for a minor matter. I understood, but still felt a bit disappointed. Maybe we'll never see each other again in this lifetime. However, to my surprise, we met again soon. That day was during the zombie riot. All the zombies were extremely agitated, causing as much destruction as they could, and I was munching on spicy strips in a small grocery store. I was eating with gusto when suddenly I heard a commotion. I went out and took a look. To my surprise, it was James and the others being chased closely by zombies. First, I instinctively wanted to hide, but when I saw them being besieged, panicked. All the members of the search and rescue team surrounded the survivors in the middle and fought against the zombies that kept lunging at them. But there were so many zombies that they just couldn't be killed off. Seeing that they were about to be overwhelmed by the zombies, I couldn't hold back any longer and shouted, "Run this way!" Everyone turned to look at me when they heard the sound. I saw James freeze for a split second, his eyes filled with both surprise and shock. Soon, he snapped out of it and shouted for everyone to run towards the grocery store. Since there were a lot of people and the door was small, the zombies quickly caught up. James ran back again, fighting off the constantly charging zombies to buy everyone some time. The zombies were getting more and more numerous. James could barely hold them off and he shouted, "Close the door, quick!" The members of the search and rescue team couldn't bear it. He shouted again, "Close it quickly, or we'll all be dead." Everyone pulled down the rolling shutter door with pained expressions, and with a loud clang, the door shut. The search and rescue team members were hugging and crying their eyes out. Then James' voice came, "Stop crying, I'm not dead." I followed the sound and looked over. James was standing behind everyone. Everyone froze. "What's wrong with you?" James shook his head. "To be honest, I don't know either." At that moment I, who was hiding in the crowd, suddenly threw myself into James' arms. "Brother, you scared the hell out of me. I thought I'd never see you again." I burst into tears, sobbing my heart out. If I had hesitated for one more second just now, James might have died. And this was the first time I was glad to be a mutant with astonishing speed, which allowed me to save James. He hugged me tightly in return and said, "It's okay. See, I'm fine, aren't I?" Outside, the zombies were constantly ramming into the rolling door. Without a doubt, the rolling door wouldn't hold up for long. Fortunately, there was a back door in the store, and James directed everyone to escape through it. Initially, I wanted to stay at the back and look for a chance to run away. But when the search and rescue team saw me alive, they were overjoyed and gathered around me, asking how I managed to escape the zombies. I didn't know how to explain, so I scratched my head and said, "I don't know either. I was so scared at that time that I just ran like crazy and then survived." Everyone let out a sigh. Thankfully, I ran fast, with a speed of 100 meters per second. How could I not be fast? I nodded and was about to say something when suddenly someone tugged at my arm. I turned my head and saw it was James. His brows were knitted tightly. I looked at him nervously and asked, "What's wrong? Are you hurt somewhere?" He blurted out, "Did you eat spicy strips?" "Ah yes, I ate quite a few packs." "Why?" James suddenly laughed and said, "Nothing. I was just asking." No, what was he laughing at? I whispered to Sophia, "Do you know why your captain is laughing?" She nodded and said, "He must be extremely happy that you're alive." I was puzzled and asked, "Huh? What do you mean?" Sophia told me that on the day I went missing, James noticed I didn't come in. He wanted to rush out to look for me, but was stopped by everyone. That night, they heard James roaring in anger and crying, and he kept mumbling, "I'm sorry." Everyone tried to comfort him, saying, "It's not your fault." But James choked up and said, "I failed to protect him." My supposed death had a big impact on James. He was constantly gloomy. No matter how much everyone tried to cheer him up, he just wouldn't smile. Sophia then changed the subject and asked, "What happened to you that day? Why didn't you come in?" I suddenly remembered that I fell that day, and in my line of sight was a pair of shiny, jet black old-fashioned leather shoes. If I remember correctly, those shoes belonged to the old lady with her grandson. She even showed off, saying they cost over 10,000 yuan. If I weren't a zombie, I would have died, and James would surely blame himself for the rest of his life. She did it on purpose. She wanted to kill me. When we got back to the safe house, the moment the old lady saw me, her face turned deathly pale. I smiled and said, "Surprised that I'm not dead?" The old lady took a step back and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I nodded and said, "It doesn't matter if you don't understand, but be careful when you sleep from now on. Maybe one day, I'll throw you out." The old lady was so scared that her legs gave way and she knelt down on the ground. The others were confused. They thought I made her kneel, and they started blaming me, saying I didn't respect the elders and cherish the young, and that I had no manners. After hearing my explanation, someone still said, "You're not dead, so isn't this a bit too much? You have to apologize today." "Yeah, apologize, or this isn't over." I looked at everyone and laughed. saying, "If you really want to stick up for her, I'll give you a chance. Just walk out of this door, walk around the safe house once. If you can still come back alive, I'll apologize right away. What do you say?" Hearing me say this, everyone immediately fell silent. They don't have the guts to be the hero. What a bunch of cowards. In the end, feeling embarrassed, the group of people reluctantly went back to their rooms. I said to the old lady who was cowering, "If you do something despicable again, I won't let you off." That night, James actually came to my room, which was quite unusual. First, he just sat by the bed, head down, not saying a word. Just when I could barely keep my eyes open and was about to doze off, I heard him whisper in my ear, Sorry. He buried his face in my neck. The touch of his cold neck made me shrink my neck a little. I gently pushed him away and saw that his face was covered with tears. I was instantly at a loss and asked, "Why are you crying?" He didn't say a word, just gently kissed me. The air seemed to hush, and it felt like the whole world consisted only of him and me. He tenderly cupped the back of my head, making the kiss last a bit longer. His breath swirled around me, leaving me a bit dazed. The hand he had around my waist tightened slightly, pulling me closer. That whole night, he was incredibly passionate. I could barely keep up. As dawn was breaking, I couldn't help but mutter softly, "Ugh, my back is killing me." James confessed his love to me. He said he was crazy about me. His sudden change made me wonder if he mistook his guilt towards me for love. As it turned out, he really liked me. I should have been happy, but I just couldn't bring myself to be. Every night, he'd torment me. No matter how much I cried out, he wouldn't stop. Every time I tried to tell him my true identity, he'd kiss me to silence me. And when I woke up, he'd already gotten up and left. Later, I refused to let him touch me no matter what, but he'd always act all clingy and pitiful, saying all he wanted was a hug. However, things always got out of control after that. Sometimes I was annoyed, but I was also happy. His gentleness, his thoughtfulness, his meticulous care made me think I was special to him. But it seemed that except for not sleeping with others in his arms, he treated everyone like this, gentle, attentive, and cautious. During dinner at night, he even picked food for and poured water for others. I felt a bit jealous and lost my appetite immediately. I got up and went back to my room. Not long after I lay down on the bed, James came in, bringing a lot of my favorite foods. He leaned over my bedside and said softly, "Have something to eat. I saw you didn't eat much just now." I turned my back to him and shook my head listlessly. "No, I don't want to. I have no appetite." If someone else said that to me, I'd just let it go and think, "Suit yourself." But James tore open a bag of chips, picked up a piece, and held it to my mouth. "Just lie there. I'll feed you." Oh wow, I could get this kind of treatment? I opened my mouth and ate the chip. It was really delicious. Just like that, with James feeding me, I ate 3 bags of chips, 2 big bags of egg rolls, and 3 packs of instant noodles. I licked my lips contentedly and my mood improved. Maybe there was something on the corner of my mouth, so James reached out a finger and wiped it. I don't know what I was thinking, but I bit his finger in my mouth. Both James and I were stunned and our faces turned as red as a monkey's bottom at the same time. I let go of his finger awkwardly, but his finger was still in my mouth. To be exact, it was hooked on my teeth. He seemed to have discovered a new land. He raised his other hand, pinched my cheek, and forced me to tilt my head up. Looking at my sharp teeth, he said with some confusion, "Did you have canines before?" I never had canines before. These just grew in the past few days. I don't know how they suddenly grew out. Anyway, they were already there when I noticed. James really liked my canines and always liked to play with them. I pushed him and mumbled, "Stop playing." He grinned wickedly. "Then let's play something else." How did he become like this? What a rascal. The riot period of the undead finally passed. The headquarters sent helicopters to pick up the survivors. 3 days later, in the early morning, the first batch of helicopters to pick up the survivors arrived over the city. Originally, James had put me on the list of the first batch to leave. So when James, who came back from the search and rescue, saw me, he got a bit angry. "Why are you still here?" I smiled and said, "You didn't leave. How could I go?" James was angry because I didn't listen to him. He ignored me during dinner. At night when we slept, he turned his back to me and didn't want to talk to me. I reached my hand down, one time after another. He couldn't help but gasp heavily. A warmth spread across Noah's palm, and then James suddenly burst out laughing. "You!" I knew he wasn't actually mad at me, he was just worried. I showed him my hand and teased. "Look, bro," he said irritably, "are you deliberately trying to piss me off?" I kissed his nose and said, "Sorry, bro. I promise there won't be a next time. Forgive me." "Okay." He looked at me helplessly and said, "What am I gonna do with you?" I knew the remaining batch might not be transported out anytime soon. Every second we stayed here meant more danger. I understood all that, and I knew James was worried about me. But I was a zombie, and I wasn't afraid. However, James was human. If it came to leaving, I actually hoped he could go. But he was on the search and rescue team and couldn't leave. So I chose to stay with him. Maybe I could save him if he was in danger. But I never expected that day to come so soon. That day, I was really restless. I looked at the sky. Dark clouds loomed and there was a light drizzle. All kinds of low growls filled my ears. The sounds were far away, but I could tell they were the enraged roars of many zombies. A zombie horde was coming. Thinking that James was still out on a search and rescue mission, panicked. He was searching about 3 kilometers away from here today. Even if he walked, it would take him over 10 minutes. But the zombie horde would be here in less than 10 minutes. It would only take me a few seconds to run there, but how could I explain it to James? Finally, I gritted my teeth and ran towards James at a speed of 1,000 meters per second. I had a really bad sense of direction. I got lost several times. I was so frustrated because of my poor sense of direction for the first time. I was running and crying. I never knew I could have so many tears. My vision was so blurred that I could hardly see the road ahead. Fortunately, 10 seconds later, I finally saw the search and rescue team. I stopped where they couldn't see me, wiped my tears, and walked out. Seeing me emerge from around the corner, Sophia exclaimed in surprise, "What are you doing here?" I didn't know how to explain. Just then, James showed up. He was even more astonished. "You?" I rushed over and whispered anxiously in James' ear, "There's danger. You guys have to go back right away." James looked at me, his expression more serious than ever. I was still thinking about how to convince him when he gave the order without hesitation. "Everyone, go back the way we came." Some of the teammates were confused. "Captain, are we retreating so early?" James said, "Retreat." Watching everyone start walking back, I let out a sigh of relief, but the sound in my ears was getting closer, and I was so nervous that my whole body started to shake. I said to James, "Can you tell them to run back?" "The faster the better." James glanced at me again. This time, he just said, "Everyone, run." The group rushed into the safe house, panting. After the last person closed the door, there was a loud noise outside, and a horde of zombies swarmed past the door. All the teammates, including James, stared at me. I was panicking inside. Was my secret as a zombie about to be revealed? Fortunately, at that moment, James received a message from headquarters, telling everyone to enhance their defenses. The headquarters would also send a helicopter to pick up everyone here as soon as possible. Seeing that everyone's attention was drawn away, I felt relieved again, just thinking about how James and the others almost died. I couldn't sleep well at night. With the howling wind, continuous rain, and the roars of zombies outside, I felt even more restless. James, behind me, hugged me tightly and whispered, "What's wrong?" "Can't sleep." I nodded. "Yeah, is it because you're scared?" "Yes, scared that he might die." He gently patted my back. "Don't be afraid. I'll protect you." Just like that, James and I held each other and slept through the night. The next morning, I was gently roused by something hard poking me. I groggily reached out and pushed it. The thing felt both hard and warm. Then I heard James mumble in his sleep, but he didn't wake up and remained sound asleep. I really couldn't stay in bed any longer, so I gently pulled his arm away, trying to get out of his embrace. I had just half risen when he pulled me back into his arms. "It's still early. Sleep a bit more. It's almost 10 o'clock. "Is that still early?" I said. "It's almost 10. It's not early anymore." James didn't even bat an eyelid. "Anyway, we can't go out. Might as well sleep." "I can't sleep." James was quiet for a while. Just when I thought he'd fallen asleep, he suddenly rolled over and put his arm on me. All of a sudden, he perked up and, with a smile, retorted, "What do you think?" I quickly pushed him and said, "Cut it out. I'm still in pain." This was the first time I'd looked at him so closely during the day. The sunlight shone on him, making him look especially bright and energetic. I couldn't resist and reached out to gently touch his shoulder. And that did it. He got completely carried away and pestered me to fool around all day long. He didn't let me get up until it was time for dinner in the evening. When I got out of bed, my legs were a bit wobbly. I lost my balance and plopped right down on the floor. That damn James. I'm happy to be with James, but I'm also conflicted. Even though I still have human consciousness, I'm a zombie after all, and I don't know when I might suddenly lose my mind. When that happens, I'm sure I'll cause a lot of harm and trouble to James. That's why I'm so torn. Before, I always thought about seducing James and then letting him know my identity so he wouldn't catch me for experiments. Now, I don't want him to know who I am. Maybe I've got too much and become greedy. I want to look better in his eyes. 10 days later, the weather finally cleared up, and the zombies outside had disappeared somewhere. Early in the morning, James received news from the headquarters that a helicopter would come to pick up the last batch of people tomorrow. When everyone heard the news, they cheered and hugged each other, crying with excitement. But I couldn't be less happy. I don't want to part with James, but I don't want to become a danger to him one day either. So I decided to stay. After making the decision, I felt extremely sad. That night, I pestered James to do it several times. The hair on his forehead was damp with sweat, and the sweat on his chin formed droplets and dripped onto my face. I rolled over and pinned James under me. It was the first time I took the initiative. James stared straight at me, making me feel so ashamed. I leaned down, covered his eyes with my hand, and then kissed his lips. After it was over, he held me in his arms and gasped, "Why are you so clingy today?" I smiled at James and said, "Because I love you." I really like James, but I wouldn't be able to stay by his side in the future. In the future, he'd meet all kinds of people. Maybe they'd be taller, prettier, and more outstanding than me. James would walk into the marriage hall hand in hand with the one he loved. God knows how much it hurt. It felt like a piece of my heart had been cut out with a knife. James seemed to sense my sadness. He kissed me over and over again, saying he loved me over and over. Amid his sweet words and gentle kisses, I fell into a deep sleep. The next day, the weather was particularly sunny, and everyone was really excited. Compared to their excitement, James and I were a bit too quiet. I asked James, "We can leave safely now. Why don't you look happy?" He blurted out, "If I died, would you remember me?" I smiled and said, "Why would you die? I won't let that happen." He squeezed my hand and said, "I trust you." When I saw the helicopter, I realized that James and I would be separating soon. I really didn't want to part with him. James told me to get on first, but I shook my head and said, "Let your teammates go first. You and I will get on last." James hesitated for a moment and motioned for his teammates to get on. In the end, I said I wanted to look at the scenery outside, so I let James sit inside, watching the ground getting farther away from us. I knew it was time. I turned my head to look at James beside me. James looked puzzled and asked, "What's wrong?" I leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Meeting you has been the greatest happiness of my life." With that, I opened the helicopter cabin door and jumped out. I saw James' smile freeze on his face, and the hand he stretched out, trying to grab me. When I landed steadily on the ground, I waved to James on the plane, forcing a smile through the bitterness in my heart and shouting, "James, you must be happy, and forget about me." I couldn't bring myself to say this last sentence. After the helicopter disappeared from sight, I glanced at the zombies. They were so hideous, I couldn't bear to look. I ran to the safe house, lay down on the bed James had slept in, and finally couldn't hold back my sobs. "James, I really like you so much. Will you forget me? Will we see each other again?" "You idiot." "Huh?" I didn't say that. I jerked my head up and saw James looking down at me, his eyes full of anger. I stared at him in disbelief, my mouth wide open. "You?" He unceremoniously flicked me on the forehead. I covered my throbbing forehead, yelling and shouting, but my eyes never left him. I asked him, "Are you James?" He snapped irritably, "I'm not James." He pulled me into his arms and whispered in my ear, "I'm your boyfriend." I was glad he came to find me, but I pushed him away. "There's something I've been hiding from you." He smiled and said, "You mean the thing that you're a zombie?" My heart skipped a beat. "You knew." He hugged me again and said, "Yeah, I've known for a long time." "When did you find out?" "When you saved me. I didn't see it was you, but I smelled the spicy strips." No wonder he asked me if I had eaten spicy strips. So he had known all along. "Then you're not scared of me, or dislike me?" "I hate zombies that run amok and kill people." "You?" I can't even love you enough. How could I dislike you? I was so immersed in joy that I couldn't snap out of it for a long time. However, when I came to my senses from the joy, I suddenly realized something was wrong. Why didn't you leave? James avoided my eyes and said, I came to find you, you silly goose. I was happy to hear that, but I felt very uneasy. I always had a feeling that James was hiding something from me. James and I stayed in the safe house, being all lovey-dovey all day. That night, he asked me again, if I die, will you remember me? The uneasiness in my heart grew stronger and stronger. I rolled out of his arms and looked at him. James, are you hiding something from me? He shook his head. No, go to sleep. I'm tired. I persisted. If you don't tell me, I'll leave and never see you again. Threatened by me, James had no choice but to tell the truth. This time he didn't just come to see me. There was an even more important thing. During the next zombie outbreak, he was supposed to lure all the zombies to one place, get them gathered together, and then blow them up. The mission was arduous and likely a one-way ticket. After hearing what he said, I was completely stunned, and my heart seemed to stop. So was he here to get himself killed? Looking at my desperate eyes, he hugged me and said with difficulty, sorry, I won't be able to accompany you anymore. I couldn't hold back my tears any longer and burst into sobs, clutching his clothes tightly. No, you can't go. I won't let you. He stroked my head and said, this is my dream. I want to be a hero. With tears streaming down my face, I asked, is there no other way? He shook his head. No, there isn't. Suddenly, I thought of something. I grabbed his arm, a bit excited. I'm a mutant. I can go for experiments. Maybe then we can develop a potion to defeat the virus. I thought James would be thrilled, but he just pulled me into his arms and said calmly, it's no use, and I can't bear to let you do that. After learning that I was a mutant, James didn't take me back to the headquarters for research. He had his own selfish reasons. He couldn't bear to part with me, but there was an even more crucial reason. The zombie virus was incredibly resilient. The research team had studied day and night for a whole month and found that the only way to destroy the zombies was with a huge fire. Knowing that this couldn't be changed, we cherished our time and each other even more. With limited food and in a tough environment, we had a candlelit dinner. He even proposed to me with a ring made of wire. He said, forgive my selfishness. Even if I can't be by your side in the future, I still want you to be mine. I said, I'm so happy. I'm yours. The night before the mission, James held me tightly. He said, I hope you'll live a good life for me. I shook my head. No, I want to be with you. No matter what he said, I was determined. As the sky was getting faintly light, he sighed and kissed my forehead. There's no time for you to regret now. I smiled. I never thought of regretting. Do you have any unfulfilled wishes? I'll make them come true for you in my next life. I thought for a moment. Kiss me one more time. In the firelight, we kissed passionately. Side story, years later, someone called the police, saying they saw a monster in the mountains that looked human but moved extremely fast. Bai Shui, who received the report, was quite excited. 1 or 2, the person thought for a while. Seems like 2. One was carrying the other, but I'm not sure. Bai Shui smiled. Got it. As long as you don't disturb them, they definitely won't hurt you. This wasn't the first time Bai Shui had received such a report. The first time she went, but when she saw the familiar faces, she cried. She murmured, it's good that you're alive. So later, whenever she received such an alarm, she would tell the caller that they wouldn't hurt people. When there were more and more zombies, I suddenly didn't want to die, and I didn't want James to die either. A hero doesn't necessarily have to die. So when the bomb came, I carried James on my back and ran like crazy. Fortunately, I was faster. After the zombies were wiped out, I asked James, do you want to go back? He shook his head and said, what would I say if I went back? That's true. So we became a mysterious and cool couple like immortals.